So right now we are getting into the rolls. Onto Bekasi for Indonesia, rolling the 73, and Messiah for Norway rolling the 37. So looks like Indonesia will be protecting here first. And it'll be interesting to see what they decide to protect for this matchup in particular. Never one to shy away from the LNs. Very capable of playing the Rice. Hybrids as well, probably no real trouble for them. And unsurprisingly, Indonesia going to protect LN1 for this match. So now we'll wait to see what Norway decides to protect for themselves. Something that they want to keep around for this match. Probably going to be a Rice pick if I were to swing a guess at it. Most of these lower seeded teams opting to show off their physical prowess as opposed to the LN technical abilities. More often than not. But we will wait and see. Usually something like Rice 2, Rice 1 is one of those like default kind of picks. But no, it's going to be Rice 3, so opting to keep the core jack around, which makes sense. Very easy to swing a good ratio on it. Wanting to get into a bit of a accuracy check versus Indonesia can really come down to which team has a tiny bit of a hiccup during that map, because singular misses can swing the momentum one way or the other. So a pretty good protect overall as we wait for Norway to ban out their map. And there are a couple of hard ones in this pool. Look towards something like LN2, LN3, and I believe Hybrid 2 as well. But it's going to be Hybrid 3 being gotten rid of here. Crash Landing Rendezvous. Not going to be played in this match. As we wait for Indonesia to ban something out. And it's going to be our tech map, our Rice Tech Vanguard 3. Not going to be played in this match. It is going to be Rice 4 being removed from the pool here. And with that out of the way, Indonesia will have the first pick in this match. We'll see what they decide to go for. Wouldn't be surprised if we saw an immediate LN pick. Don't necessarily have to go for the protect first, but if they really want to put Norway through their paces, really see if they are up to snuff on those LN picks, maybe something like LN2 or LN3 might get thrown out. But really, I feel like Indonesia has pick of the litter with regards to what they would want to go into in this match. And Norway will just need to put together a composition that could potentially cause an upset here. The odds are stacked against them, but it's not impossible. We have seen Norway teams in the past, or Norwegian teams in the past in, say, 4-key, put a bit of a fight against higher seeded opponents. So we'll see if their 7-key roster here can live up to the billing as well. Maybe cause a bit of a surprise in terms of some of the score lines. For right now, Indonesia really opting to take their time on this first pick, and sure enough, it's going to be LN2, so not immediately going for the protect, but going into what is probably going to be Indonesia's preferred category with regards to what they're going to want to get into here. So for right now, we're going to wait on the players to get into the lobby. And we see some of Indonesia's players, mainly onto Bekasi, opting to close their client, relog, just to maybe freshen up the client, make sure it's a fresh instance of the game if it has been running for a while. Can cause a couple of issues, but for right now, as we wait for the players to get ready, it looks like we have another commentator in the booth that is ready. We have Saloska Els. Saloska Els, how's it going today?
Hello there. Did I miss anything so far?
Not really.
Oh, okay, okay. That's cool.
Yeah, we've gotten the protection bands out of the way. You're just in time for that first pick. Indonesia opted to go for LN2 here, um, while protecting LN1, and meanwhile Norway protected uh, Rice 3 and got rid of Hybrid 3 from this pool. So I think kind of living up to the billing here in terms of what we might have been expecting going into this. Unsurprising to see Indonesia opting for the LN picks, and Norway is probably going to stick to the Rice. But for right now, looks like it's going to be Ravko and Anta for Indonesia, going up against Androma and Messiah for Norway here.
Alright, so I don't really have that much information on Norway right now, other than the fact that they're number 28. I am aware at least of who Messiah is. I've heard of that name for a while.
Hmm.
As for Indonesia, I've seen Ravko in a recent tournament. I think that was the random tournament. I'm not sure if they were there, but I know Onta Picasso has played a lot of Mania World Cups already, 4K, 7K. Either way, that experience will definitely help. Mm.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. I was mentioning it before you got here that Indonesia basically household names when it comes to 7 key, 4 key as well, and especially with players like Antipikasi, just mainstays, probably going to be the anchor for their team going into this tournament. Going to rely a lot on them to pull out some of these disgustingly high scores that we've known them for before. But Ravko actually finding the first drop as we get into this first pick, going to give Norway a bit of a cushion to work with as we see Androma traded back immediately. So not really taking advantage of that early opportunity, but it's still very early goings here. But Indonesia going to be holding on to about a 9,000 point lead to start this map off.
Alright, so just looking at the pick right now, obviously with elements and all that, I can see why Indonesia would choose this. This is sort of what their strong suit really is, at least overall and historically was at the very least. I mean, consistency-wise though, it's pretty close. It's just that I have a feeling, like, let's look at the accuracies real quick. They kind of look similar if you look at the unstable rate, but it's very clear that Norway is a little bit more distributed, pretty far apart from each other.
Yeah, just just a much wider UR bar there as Androma finds another couple of drops through the middle section of the chart, transitioning into that back half, gonna help expand this lead for Indonesia. And Norway was doing really good at the start there, not having the highest overall average accuracy in comparison to their Indonesian brethren, but still being able to hold on to the high 99s for a while there, or at the low 99 mark for a while. Before things started to kind of slip by the wayside, now down into the 98% range. And meanwhile, Indonesia, as you mentioned, just very comfortable on LN style picks like this. Not the most dense in the world, and the pattern is pretty comfortable overall for players of their caliber. Despite the early hiccups from Ravko, able to stabilize there to lend supporting hand to Antipikasi, who MVPs the lobby, and Indonesia picks with this first point by 48,000 points to make it 1-0.
That's a really strong score for Indonesia there. I mean, the mere fact that the total of their 200 count is lower than the lowest 200 count of Norway, which is Messiah at 44, that already shows that is the skill differential when it comes to LNs. So I think Indonesia will just continue treading the path on that. That's if there are more picks, obviously.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, it was one of those where I would imagine Norway probably went into this match, or at least the Norwegian players went into this match knowing it's like, okay, we're probably not going to win these LM picks, but let's at least put on a bit of a show here. And to be fair, those scores are nothing to scoff at on their side. Definitely very competitive scores overall. It's just when you go up against a team that thrives on LN picks, it's going to be a bit of an uphill battle, but not to be dissuaded by that. They're going to go straight into their protect to start things off here. Rice 3, so opting to go for that cord jack pick in this pool. And we've already seen some, like, we've only had one match so far this weekend, and we've already had a near 1 mil score on this.
Oh, I saw that. That was an insane team score.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
So this BPM range for 7 key players is definitely very comfortable, and this map doesn't really pull or doesn't really have many surprises to it. It's very straightforward 1-2, no real awkward bursts like we see in the later rounds that try to trip you up, some changing rhythms that can throw you off your groove. It's really just, can you read it? And if you can read it, you're going to get a high score on it. Pardon the pun there.
That's true. Okay. But I don't know. I'm just a little bit afraid of a core jack pick because when you're let's say you miss on a core jack pick, that will that tends to typically decrease much more in comparison to something like a chord stream or something like even a lens to an extent. Because when you make mistakes on a chord jack map, you typically also find a few 50s here and there, so that will really break your accuracy a lot.
Yeah, it's definitely a risky pick in the grand scheme of things, but it's one of those. It's a very high risk, high reward type of pick. Where it's like if you can hunker down and just sharpshoot the accuracy component and avoid the misses, you're going to get a high score. And if your opponent finds a drop anywhere in the map, like you mentioned, it's several thousand points you're going to be giving over the other way. So can we just see how Norway stacks up here as we get this map underway? It's a bit of a build-up before we get into the actual meat of the chart, the reign of core jacks proper. So, all right, just going to be a couple hundred points separating these two rosters as we get through this introduction here.
Mm-hmm. I can already feel from the song itself. I mean, this is a very popular song, especially in the gaming scene.
Yeah.
So I really want to see how consistent everyone can get. In my opinion, I can see why Norway picked this. It's a great choice in my opinion because this can really make someone miss. Well, right on cue. Unfortunately, it wasn't really the team that you'd want to miss, especially if you're the one who picked this.
Yeah, very clean miss overall though, just that middle column giving Zickwitz a bit of an issue, but they find another one that's going to really compound matters as Astro actually trades one of them back. And as you mentioned, if you find a miss on one of these heavier core jack sections, you can see those bad judgments come down, picking up a couple of 200s, trying to recover from it. But overall, in the exchanges, Indonesia comes out ahead by about 14,000 points going into the middle portion of the chart. And Droma, oh, I was about to mention, hanging on to some pretty high accuracy for themselves, 99.7, really pulling in the bulk, but finding the drop as well. No FCs left for Norway, and Indonesia starting to run away with this a little bit. 25,000 points with Anta with that 99.93% accuracy. Still holding on to the FC here as well.
For a bit, I was starting to feel like Norway had a chance. Like Azrael was at a low 99.2, and that really could have changed a lot. But if Norway couldn't capitalize on those mistakes, or the one mistake that Indonesia has, especially being seed number 5, then there's nothing much they can really do. This lead is starting to grow at a rate where it's going to be impossible to catch up, especially with the time that's left.
Yeah, 800,000 points, 43,000 the margin between the two teams, and another couple of misses from Norway, and Droma the next one to fall. Zickwitz, a full combo reset on the side of Norway, gonna shut the door immediately. Azrael finding a miss for the road, but with a performance like that from Anta Bikasi, there's really nothing Norway could have done from the early get-go, and Indonesia picks up the first break point in this match to make it 2-0.
I guess you could say Anta Bikasi got the high score. I'm sorry, I had to say that. Okay, but on a more serious note, it's really unfortunate because if you notice, there was an opportunity for Norway to catch up.
Oh,
Unfortunately, just because the ending happened, there was no way for them to do it. What, did you think I was gonna make a Norway pun?
No, I honestly, if you had, I would have been more impressed than anything if you had. But no, it's definitely part of the course. Gotta start the year off right. Gotta get one of them grown worthy puns in here. But as we continue on here, Indonesia really in the driver's seat as they opt to go for something a little bit outside of what we would probably expect. And go for Rice 1. Off the back of that breakpoint, maybe feeling a little bit more emboldened to go try out something in the Rice category, maybe wanting to preserve some of the scores that they have on some of these LN picks for later, unless absolutely necessary. So can definitely get behind it. If they have the ratio, if they have the consistency to do a more speed-oriented pick like this, then I'm all for it.
Well, I find it interesting that they're going for a Rice pick. But considering that Norway had misses on a core check pick, and typically the core check pick is probably one of the lesser physical charts, and I'd think that this being a speed chart tends to be one of the more physical charts, I could see why Indonesia would go with that. It's definitely a great strategy, especially if you know that in patterns like this, Norway can tend to choke or find a few misses here and there. It's a great pick from Indonesia overall.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to agree with you there. It's definitely probably more geared towards the strengths of Indonesia, as you mentioned, just the ability to read some of these more physical patterns. This is definitely a pick that it labels itself as a like single stream speed pick, like we're used to seeing, but there's definitely quite a couple of chord stream elements that litter the landscape here or there. You get these 3-note, 4-note chords in between some of those streams. The transitions can get a little dense at times as you get through some of these sections. So it's definitely not the easiest thing to get through unscathed if you're not able to read your way through it comfortably, especially at this BPM. It can be quite a bit of an issue, but we see Antipikasi check out. We're going to see Yeah come in to back up Azriel, and Messiah and Drome are going to be staying put here for Norway, seeing if they can basically scratch the armor of Indonesia here, trying to get back that breakpoint they gave away.
I don't know. I remember when you mentioned something about Indonesia's strengths. It could definitely be one, but I have a feeling this pick is more of a weakness of Norway pick rather than capitalizing on their strength. So I think that's really the best way to go for it, especially when the seed this difference is that big. Just because when you're a lower seeded team, the balance tends to be a lot lower. Like there's like that one skill set where they can be good at, and
Yeah.
in my opinion, this is one of those. Indonesia has seen an opening in that skill set, which is Rice. It is exactly why they would choose a speed pick like this, and I think that's a great find from Indonesia right there.
For sure. So for right now, this opening introduction starting to come through now, and both teams able to make it through with very high marks overall. Everybody sitting at and around that 99.7 mark. I feel like that's going to be the marker we're going to really plant down going through this tournament, where that's kind of the bar for this early round that players want to aim for in terms of accuracy, because that's where you start to see those 990,000 plus scores that really turn the tide. But for right now, as we transition on, a bit of a break coming through here before things starts to pick up for the back half. We see Indonesia ahead. Just in terms of accuracy, no drops so far. 6,000 points to the good. This is the closest Norway has held Indonesia for right now. Is definitely within catching territory if Indonesia were to find a drop transitioning into this last third. So might be a bit of a overestimation from Indonesia in terms of what Norway can do. They're definitely up to the task for right now. Here we go into the last third.
Very interesting because honestly, everyone's so consistent. Even in a part like this, I find it interesting. I mean, sure, accuracy difference there, but Messiah, unfortunately, look at that accuracy. And Droma finding the miss, that was the higher act. Like, I just noticed it. Messiah was sort of rushing in that one part, which is a bad sign of a misread there, even to a little bit of an extent.
Yeah, just a little bit. Starting to pick up the pace a little bit. That we hadn't mentioned the fact that they play with hidden, so the actual lane cover coming up does lend itself to starting to have tendencies for rushing, but still able to hold on to their full combo, and Droma finding the misses during that last section really helped kind of torpedo this lead over in the direction of Indonesia as Messiah finds the last drop for the road, and it's gonna be a 76,000 point lead at the end of the day. Not gonna tell the full story of how that map was going, but Indonesia able to fully capitalize on that breakpoint to make it 3-0 now.
3-0, that is a big advantage. Totally not over yet. So we have here with a really solid ratio, really good ratio even. The 3-200 count also, it's also a good sign of very good speed control. Messiah and Droma had pretty good ratios as well, but the 200 count difference was way too much. I'm not sure what Norway is going to go for at this point. I think they're going to go for the chord stream pick because picking LNs and hybrids isn't really a good way to go for it. I think it's no-show Sakuretsu Girl for Norway here.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree there. It's probably going to be... Oh, actually, going to go for a hybrid too, actually. Changing up things a little bit. It is potentially their last pick already. So might as well explore other avenues. The rice pick that they went for earlier didn't work out. They couldn't hang on rice 1, so I think they've kind of seen what Indonesia is capable of and are not wanting to continue down that road any longer. So opting for hybrid 2 here, and we'll see a full substitution from Indonesia, able to really stretch their full roster to its fullest potential. Anta and Raf coming in to contest on this pick.
I don't know, like, I remember when you mentioned about they saw that a rice wasn't a good option. I'd highly disagree because they already saw as well how Ellen went.
Yeah.
And I'd argue at the very least, I didn't keep track of how big the differential was. But I'd argue picking something related to Ellen is much more difficult to counter rather than them picking something like rice.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, Ellen 2 wasn't that bad of a score difference. It was only it was under 50,000, which is less than the rice picks actually, which is surprising given everything we've said so far. So maybe they see something in the cards. I mean, at this point, it's one of those where it's better to go out swinging with something maybe off the wall a little bit, something out of the comfort zone to try to mix things up than just go down quietly. Like, okay, we know we're beat on these other two categories. Let's just continue that. So I'm up for the pick. Might not be the most sound, but hey, they can prove us wrong.
I can see where you're coming from, but you have to remember there was a chord jack pick, so differences like that will tend to be really big. Now, we're going to see an element of rice and Ellen mixed together. I mean, okay, hybrid, obviously. But like, what makes hybrid even a hybrid? You can see a lot of these technical patterns. What I really find interesting, though, is these grace notes. Oh, come on, I was about to say everyone was consistent.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be a test of how well these teams can transition between these hard LN structures going into those grace note rice fills in between. And even when we get into these more bog standard, quote-unquote, normal LN anchored sections with all this inundated rice, we see a little bit of struggle coming through from Norway. Messiah picking up a couple of drops through that section, going into the back half already, but still able to keep themselves in and around that high 98, low 99% mark. But as it stands, those misses not traded back in any way, shape, or form by Indonesia. They're going to start rolling this lead to about 40,000 points. With a third of the map left to go, there's really not a lot of time left for Norway to mount any sort of meaningful comeback here.
There is very little time. I understand it's a 45,000 currently, but with such a time limit, and not to mention the team size only being 2, that's a lot, but that is a unexpected miss. Whoa, okay. Okay, I know that there's still a lot, there's like very little time, but a 10,000 point decrease, that's still a lot. That's still a big dent.
Absolutely. It's a little bit scary seeing a full team reset from one side, but now trading back, and it does put a bit of a dent in that score. A bit too little too late in the grand scheme of things, but I mean, any earlier, and maybe we could have had a bit of a comeback on our hands, but as it stands, Indonesia going to make it a match point situation. A little bit of a hiccup there towards the end, but still doing more than enough to secure that 4th point in this match.
You know what? Now that happened, technically Norway was actually the more consistent team. I mean, sure,
Absolutely.
three misses, but like at the same time, they happen at the same time. So I was like, okay, technically speaking, for this pick, Norway was the more consistent team. So props to them. I did not expect that to happen. That was actually maybe they saw something we didn't, and I applaud them for taking that risk.
Absolutely. We're here. We're here. We're just here to yap. At the end of the day, they're the ones putting on the performances, and Androma getting that FC on this map when nobody else in the lobby could. Hats off to them. Definitely pretty hard map to do that on. Unfortunately, not going to lead to a point there, but I mean, it's the little things here and there at the end of the day that you need to take away from moments like that. And Indonesia gonna opt to go for their protect. It's gonna be LN1 here.
I'm still gonna be proud of that. That's not something. That's not something they can just do.
Yeah, and we always joke in 7 key whenever it rolls around about Surf2 LNs. Flipping the script, it's not Surf2 release. It's far worse. It's Surf2 inverse. We have inverse in round of 32.
Well, it's an Ellen chart. So either way, it still fits Surf2, I'd say. But on a more serious note, okay, I'm looking here. My keyboard doesn't support inverse. Oh, okay. I wonder what that could be.
I mean, I hope their keyboard has at least 7 key rollover. If it stops at 6, we are in for a bad time. There are 7 column full inverse going on in this map, so it'll be interesting to see what happens here. As Indonesia opts to choose their protect to try and close this map out. And if you aren't aware of what inverse is, this is what inverse is. You're essentially holding down pretty much every column. It's much to how the difficulty name describes it. You're really watching out for the negative space in this map as a whole. And we already see a couple of drops from the Norwegians, another full combo reset from them going to help extend this lead for Indonesia to the tune of about 40,000 points. It is a very hard skill set to wrap your mind around. The LN2 pick we saw earlier, pure density, that's easy to read through. This forces your fingers to stay down at pretty much all times, and the tendency to want to lift up early is massive.
Yeah, it's crazy. Inverse is really difficult, especially when you're in 7K. I mean, look at the OD6. In contrast to like a lot of 4K charts where inverse OD tends to be at around 7 or even 8 to an extent. The reason why here it's a little bit lower is because players focus more on the aspect of being able to coordinate all of your fingers, while also still, of course, not sacrificing too much accuracy. Indonesia has had a very good balance of both of them. Norway, unfortunately, has gotten the short end of the stick, while they're definitely not too far behind on consistency. Never mind. The reason why I say they're not too far is, yeah, those misses did happen, but that accuracy is a bigger issue, because if you're not able to accurately release those, especially with this timing window, that's really a sign of coordination having to improve by a lot.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a reason why Indonesia protected this. This is definitely not everybody's bread and butter. We're probably going to see scores like this even from some of the higher seeded teams where it's just going to be they're just going to ride the struggle bus the entire minute 53. But Indonesia, not one of those participants. They comfortably make it through that, nearly FCing. I think Anta actually picking up just a singular 50, but not breaking combo there. Gonna MVP the lobby and close out the match by a score of 5-0 to punch their ticket into that winner's round of 16. very well done overall from them.
That's crazy. A crazy team score from Indonesia. Norway had a great performance as well. Don't get me wrong. Like,
Hmm.
definitely put up a fight. Had some moments where they really almost had like some opportunities. Like I could have really seen maybe one or two opportunities for Norway there, and unfortunately though, Indonesia also gave them a very little time for them to capitalize on what could have been an opportunity for Norway.